Hello, my name is Greg Massi, and this is episode number 47 of The Color of Air, a podcast about the musical journey. And my guest this week is Mr. Danny Axel. For those of you who don't know who Danny is, he is a New York City-based musician, guitarist, composer. He's in the band August on Sunday, as well as having multiple solo records to his name. And as of the day that I recorded this interview with him, he dropped an EP by another project of his called The Jesus Orphans. He's also an avid Twitch streamer. He streams throughout the week on his own channel, and then on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, he co-hosts Hive Mind Radio with Stephen James. And when I worked for Capital Wrestling from 2017 to 2019, Stephen James was one of our commentators. And also, when I was running sound for the live shows, I was using Steve's computer, and when there were times when we didn't have a theme available for a certain wrestler, either them not having one or me not having one for them, we would call upon Steve's vast library of indie rock musicians, and of those, August on Sunday was used a lot, actually, for different wrestlers. And so to introduce you to the music of Danny Axel, we're going to start with the first track I ever heard from them, which is something we used for the wrestler Anthony Gangone, and this track is called Battery Acid.
Behind the fishes mouth. Yo, yo, yo.
You can hear me? All right.
Mr. Greg. or is it Mr. Ret Con?
Oh, you just call me Greg. Well, I think the Ret Con, like, I don't know if this was like, if you encountered this in the music scene you grew up in, but where like people would name, like you wouldn't call someone by their first and last name, you'd call them by their first name and whatever band they were in.
Sure,
Like,
sure.
oh, like like Danny August on Sunday was talking to me the other day.
That's how everybody is in my phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's the only way I'd ever keep it short. Because I'm that guy. I'm terrible with names. Like they just at the second someone tells me their name, it's gone. So everybody's like, I'm like, oh, it's good, brother. How you doing? Like I just keep it light. And then after a few times, it'll stick. So I always do name and band so that I just remember who the fuck I'm talking about. And then after a while, it stays in my brain. And I'm like, all right, cool. I got it. It's just because, I mean, I meet people under these conditions, you know what I mean? Like you're playing a show and it's like, I'm such a basket case on show day that it's like impossible for me to get new information, It's like, I'm just focused on the task at hand and that's about it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Yeah. Like there were people who I would have met on my old band's tours and like, I'd run into them and I'm like, oh yeah. I met you when you were in Salt Lake City like 20 years ago. It's just or whatever. And I was just like, yeah, I remember your face.
Exactly.
What's your name again? I don't know. Was I nice to you? Was I drunk? I don't know.
Hopefully I wasn't an asshole. It's like,
these things can happen. So as you can tell, it's not a very organized interview.
Oh,
I'm
great,
not that
great.
kind of guy.
Yeah, just whatever you need, brother. I'm here. Let's do
it. Whatever I need. Well, I was gonna say like so. I don't know a ton about you. I just know from our mutual friend Stephen James,
the icon, the man, the myth, the legend.
And just as a side note, so my experience with Steve was always based on Capital Wrestling when I was working there with him. And when Steve's on commentary, he's he's got the radio voice down. He knows how to do that. Mm-hmm. When I see him on the show with you, I'm like, I didn't know he had a Brooklyn accent.
Uh-huh. Well, I think too, it's a thing where if you're from Brooklyn, it's not an accent. It's just how we all talk.
Right, yeah.
But it definitely goes away when you're in situations where you're not with people who speak that language. But when you're around other people who do speak the language, it comes out very strongly. Like I think I speak in a more direct Brooklyn accent on the show as well because Steve's there. So we're just going off each other, and it's just like next thing you know, it's hard to explain to people who haven't been here, but it really does come from everything in New York is fast, right? Mm-hmm. So you move fast, you operate fast, you talk fast. So that Brooklyn thing, the way that we speak really just comes from dropping syllables and saying things quickly, and like it's just this thing of we basically speak in shorthand, and once you're around it enough, you get it. But when it's new, it's like I've had people actually, like when we're out on the road and stuff, I've had people go, what? Like they don't understand what I'm saying. Like I'm not speaking English. I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta slow down, enunciate your words, which is a nightmare with singing too. I am a mumble mouthed, from the school of Eddie Vedder type of situation where it's like you need a lyric sheet to know what the hell I'm singing, but it's all right. It is what it is.
Well, I mean, like I said, it was really cool to me, and I think I know we'll get into the music stuff too, but for those of you listening, I'm talking about Hive Mind Radio on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. And so the sense I get from like watching it, because having known Steve for a few years, and I never tuned into his stuff before, and what I notice is what immediately grabs me about it is that it's like I really feel like I'm listening to two really good friends talk, and that's the kind of shit that I love. Like, I just like, where the conversation, you feel like, like I don't know all the lingo, I don't know all their history, I don't know everything, all the in jokes, whatever, but I feel comfortable, and I'm like these are people I'd want to hang out with.
Yeah, well, you said it all right there by saying like, "Oh, this is it. This is it." Because I feel the same way. I love when I tune in to something and it feels genuine. Like I when the whole Let's Plays thing on YouTube started taking off, right? I really got into watching the Game Grumps. But then over time they sort of became like rock stars to the point where there's like millions of people watching them, and you can tell that they're aware of how they speak and what they say. So it changed from dudes hanging out playing video games to like, it's got a formula and it's still fun. I jump in from time to time. I'm like, they have moments of brilliance, but it's definitely changed what it is. So with our thing, right, we had different versions of it along the way. We've relaunched this thing like 3 or 4 times already. But each time I wanted to get like you said, Steve knows how to do the radio voice. And like, I wanted to get more and more away from that, from like a presented thing, and get closer to what it's like when nothing's going on, when we're not doing a show, and when there's no cameras or microphones. Like, because we just literally sit around, like we do what we do on the show all the time. That's just how we interact with each other. So it was like, how do we make that a show? Like, how do we get that into it? So I think this version just had the right mix of us being in that mindset, Twitch being a great platform, and the chat element and everything. So, and the fact that I can seamlessly go from doing the talking bits to like stuff on the internet, and everything is visual, and it really like just lended itself to it becoming more conversational. And then it's been getting the most traction, so there's really no reason to move away from that now that it's working, So yeah, it's been great. And like so there's days where we have like one of our best shows and it's just us being goons, and then as soon as the show is over, like we'll end the broadcast, and I'll just look at Steve. I'll be like, we really just found a way to monetize hanging out with each other, and that's brilliant.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of the way you're talking about. I mean, that's the kind of conversation type I wanted my podcast to have too. And so a lot of times when I'm talking to my friends, like friends from bands and stuff I knew, it's like that kind of comes out. But then when I've interviewed people who are more, I don't want to say professional, but who treat it more like, hey, you're talking to me about my project, so let me get all the, boom, 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 and it didn't have as much magic. It just wasn't as good. Like, I like tangents, and I like because I like those those comedy podcasts where people like go off, and shit like that, and just yeah, we're just hanging out. We're just two musicians hanging out, talking on a Sunday.
Exactly. Like, I mean, we could try to like throw a bunch of pretense around it, but you know what?
Yeah.
I remember the Black Crowes, man. I love that fucking band, and they had this thing they used to say about like, you just get tuned into the song, and once you're tuned into the song, you just know the frequency, and everybody's tuned into that same song. And it's like, I do feel like it's like that. Once you have that moment where you just know that that's what you're about, it just changes your DNA. And like when you see somebody else and you know that they're the same way, it's like there's all this shit that's just understood, and it makes everything very conversational, because you don't have to put up the guy in the band, like, fuck all that. Like, come on, man, you do it for free in somebody's sweaty basement with no air conditioning. Whether or not there was any prospects, because you're gonna do it either way, because the shit is just too fucking good. It's like again, like I was saying, how it's friends talking, right? We monetize that. If I could monetize the feeling when you play something and it clicks, you know what I mean? Oh my God. Like, if I could translate that into dollars, I'd be paid, But
Yeah, I don't know about that. I've been going at it for 20 years, and my royalty checks speak differently.
Exactly, because you can't monetize that
Yeah.
thing, you know.
Yeah.
That thing is just, it's not about that, you know.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle thing, you know.
It, but I did kind of want to ask about music just because I want to know. So like, because my experience again, not that it's all about Stephen James at this point, although I'm
He would
sure
tell you it is.
uh, as much as I'm hoping to come visit him at some point and pee in his shower, but 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 anyway, aside aside from, but I mean, but really, Steven or Steve, I don't know what I don't know what to call him, Steve. Anyway, I knew him. He was like one of the first people I met hanging out at Capital Wrestling, and when it kind of I became the de facto sound guy. In addition to like doing music, I was actually doing this, the live sound, and like I had to like use Steve's computer and try his mouse that didn't work that was like backwards, and it was awesome. But what I loved is that he was really clued in. He had a deep well of music of bands he's friends with, and so if we have like 30 wrestlers on a show and like I've got themes for 20 of them, and Steve's like, oh, just grab an August on Sunday track, grab this track, grab this track, and we had this like wealth of cool independent music that we could use to that. So that's kind of where I got introduced to your music, because I think we used a couple August on Sunday tracks for various wrestlers over the years,
Yeah.
and we even had you played live ones too with us.
Yeah, we played Gangone out to the ring one
Yeah,
time. That was
yeah,
cool. Yeah, I actually had a good time with that.
yeah, yeah. That was fun.
That was definitely like a bucket list moment. I'm like, yo, I'm playing a wrestler in the ring. All right, let's go. Fuck yeah. Like if I went back in time and told my 13-year-old self that I was gonna be doing that, he'd be pretty fucking pleased.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Same thing for me when I'm like, holy shit, someone's coming out to a song I wrote for them. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and dude, and I gotta say, you did a tremendous job. I think that for me, the highlight of that period, the Capitol period, was the presentation. I thought the video packages were cool. I thought the sound elements were cool. That's the shit that actually caught my attention, really. So,
cool. Thank you.
Great job, man.
Well, thank you. But but it's back to you now. But so August on Sunday, is that well, before we get to that, I mean, is that kind of like I don't want to say is that your first band, but I mean that's kind of been your primary music project or your primary band the last few years? Am I misinterpreting that? Or
yeah, we're honestly over a decade in. We've been at this a long time. We're just now in that time, I guess, the difference of the modern music world, that we've only released a couple of records and a couple of EPs, which doesn't seem like a lot, but these days it's really more about the in-between than the actual releases. And so we've played well over 1,000 shows. Like I don't have the number in my head, but it's large. Like we've played a lot of music in the last 10 years. So we've been primarily East Coast, just monetarily it's difficult for us to get too far, but we've toured to the best of our ability, and regionally, the name has some clout, I guess. If we haven't been necessarily monetarily successful, or as far as becoming more of a national act, we've been influential on the bands that have come after us. A lot of people would cite us as an influence, and we have, over the course of our run, really been prudent on booking shows where we could control what bands get on the bill. So we would put good lineups together, getting people who hadn't played in front of people yet, bands that hadn't played in front of people, getting them in front of eyeballs, getting them paid. We've always been sort of fighters for a scene in that way. We've always been sort of trying to like make it happen, and like not just for us, but for like the whole vibe. And so while it'd be nice to be national and be on that kind of grind, at least there's that. And I feel really good about what we've done in that sense. And so just before I got on with you, I was listening to the mixes for our new album, and I'm just like, so fucking satisfied. Like I don't know what's next. I don't know what the next phase of the band is, but the good thing is the guys in the band are some of my closest friends, to the point where we don't even call it, we're a family. You know, they're my brothers. And
Yeah.
so we have the healthiest band dynamic of any band I've ever known personally. And I'm fucking proud of that, because no matter what happens, no matter what we do, no matter where we are in our lives, we're always going to be August on Sunday. It's a band that can't break up, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, really, in a lot of ways, that's the win. So.
And that's so important. Like, it's, if I had advice, I would go back and give my 12-year-old or my 15-year-old self before getting into bands. You know, that would be the main thing. It's like, if you're gonna do this, you know, there's there's things you should do ahead of time. I was actually thinking about this the other day. I'm like, if I was gonna tell a younger kid what to do, I'd be like, well, first of all, talk about money first. When there's no money coming in, it's a lot easier to figure that out than when you have not like hundreds of dollars, but even when you get like
tens of dollars,
tens of dollars, you know.
Yeah, well, right. I was fortunate in that we have a cool dynamic in the band where I'm 4 years older than the bass player and he's 4 years older than the drummer. So there's a wide age gap. So by the time we'd put the band together, I already had a band I was in for 10 years that failed. And I had, you know, kind of an encyclopedic brain for rock history. Like I was, you know, very about rock and roll. So I'd seen all the mistakes. I'd read all the biographies, watched every documentary. So like from day one, I was like, look, I got a vision for what the band could be. But the most important thing is we gotta hit this like REM. We split everything down the middle. You know, it's the only way to avoid acrimony is to make everyone equal partners, no matter who's writing songs, no matter what's going on, no splitting hairs, just everything down the middle. And then no matter what happens, you know, you all got your equal share. And you know what? And I don't know if it's coincidental or if there's something to it. We've been blessed in terms of, though we're not a big band, we've always done well with money. Like we've always gotten the band paid, and we've always gotten the bands on our bills paid. And like it's at the point where we just have the band money.
Yeah.
Right, to the point where like if somebody's like, yo, I'm short on my electric bill, I'm gonna take this out the band kitty, we're like, yeah, get it back whenever. Like it's so loose. We don't have any money stresses as a band. And you're right, it is literally the first thing you should talk about. And I give that advice to anybody starting a band. I say, don't argue about money. It will erode everything good about the chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And you will break up. Because inevitably, because this happens in every band, inevitably each member at a different point will feel like they are being taken for granted.
Yes.
It's just how it is. It's the nature of what it is. You know, if one person's writing all the songs and then somebody else is getting more attention, it creates energy. You know, these are natural ebbs and flows of being in a band. If you tie the money in with all that, now ego decisions are getting made about money. And it's like, oh, here we go. This guy wants more because he thinks he's fucking whatever, you know, and this guy's over here going, I don't care, man. I just want to get barbecue. And like, you know, like, and it's just the whole thing. And so, yeah, it really is. It's great advice. Just settle your money. And if you're not the kind of person who can be democratic like that, then you better be the primary songwriter and you better drop that hammer from day one. I'm taking this much of the publishing. You know, you better find people that are okay with that arrangement. If not, you're going to have problems.
Yeah. Well, it was funny. I was, so, you know, the rock band Slade from the 70s. Of course, I mean, I shouldn't question your knowledge, but anyway.
There are always gaps. You can't get to it all.
Yeah, I know.
Which is one of my favorite things about rock and roll. It's eternal. I'm always learning.
Yeah. Well, I remember I was watching videos of them, and like they had this like super goofy lead guitar player who would always dress in like the crazy outfits, and he'd have like and like you'd seem like he's like the main guy in the band because he's the one getting the attention and whatever. Turns out he didn't write any of the material. And I guess his quote about it was because I guess the other band members were like, you know, you might want to tone it down a little bit. He's like, you write the hits and I'll sell them to the people. And so he knew his role
Yeah.
is, to, like, I can't write as good as you, but I'm going to make sure that people remember us so that your songs get more attention.
And honestly, it's an important role. It may not seem like it to the guy writing the songs, but if anything, I could be honest and always say that's somewhere where I've always lacked, because I wouldn't consider myself a showman at all.
Yeah.
I have a very high opinion of the art and a very low opinion of the artist. Like, I see myself more like a laborer, I swing a hammer for a living and just happens to be a guitar, Like, that's just the way I see it. So I've never been very self-aggrandizing. So I don't have that in me. I have my own version of being like, you have to have a pulse on stage and you got to move and you got to, interact and you got to make it a show. But for me, it's always an offshoot of me and where I'm at that day. Like, I don't really hide my emotions well. So if I'm pissed off, you're gonna get an angry show. If I'm in my head, you're gonna get a moody show. It's just I can't do anything about that. It's just the way I'm wired. So it's funny because when it's funny that it all keeps tying around to Steve. When August on Sunday was first created, it actually came to me in a dream. I had a dream that I was looking up my band in the newspaper, and then I got to the headline and it said August on Sunday is a rock and roll experience. And so I woke up and I wrote down the name, and I was like, rock and roll experience, August on Sunday. Felt like a sign that I should do something that had more of that, like, 70s Stones kind of energy to it, right? I was like, I should do a rock and roll thing, but I was in like a sort of a prog rock band before that. And I was like, I think that I'm going to do that. I'm going to make this project called August on Sunday. And at the time, I was in this prog rock band and I was the lead singer, and I basically just played chords. I held down I didn't do any of the intricate stuff. So I was young. So I don't even know. I was probably like 20, 19, maybe when this dream happened. And I was like, all right, so I'll start a project. I'll call it August on Sunday. It'll be this rock and roll thing. You know what? I'm going to be the lead guitar player, because in my head, if I take that role, I'm going to get better at playing lead. It's going to improve my skills. Makes sense. It's a very pragmatic decision. So I was like, all right, so I need a singer. The first thought I had. And so I called up Steve. Because Steve, a lot of people don't know this, is an excellent singer. Steve has a beautiful singing voice. And he and I have been harmonizing together since we were 10-year-old kids. So I was like, that's the obvious choice, So I called Steve. I'm like, bro, I got this thing, August on Sunday. You want to do it? He's like, yeah, I'm in. Boom. So we start writing songs. We had a whole batch of songs that went nowhere. Then we shifted directions. We had a whole nother batch of songs, Then he leaves and he joins the military. And I'm in this other band that at the time was my main band. And I'm writing these August on Sunday songs. And he would come home on leave and I'd give him my demos and he would write melodies to them. And it's like, it was really starting to turn into something. And I was like, man, these songs are really good. And then I'm in this other band. At the same time, I meet what would end up my wife of 7 years. Like, we had this whole long run together. I meet this human. And through her, I get to her house for Christmas one year, and her sister is dating what would become the drummer of August on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
And her brother is best friends with who would become the bass player of August on Sunday. So I meet these guys. I show them these demos, and it just clicks. It's like, oh, my God. So this weird thing starts happening where I've got my main thing going on, but on the side, I'm cultivating this little energy. So now I've got the guys, unbeknownst, I've got the guys who I'm going to spend the decade with. So we get in a room and we jam, and it has like this vibe to it. And I'm like, man, this feels fucking good. And of course, the universe just parts and makes ways. As all this is going on, my other band that I've been in for 10 years starts to disintegrate and just fall apart. And so the decision gets taken out of my hands. I'm like, oh, that's not a thing anymore. This feels really good. All right, let's go. So Steve's coming home on leave. We're making these demos. We're learning these songs all the while I'm singing while he's not there. Never once considering I'm going to be the guy. Like, thinking the whole time, I'm just holding it down for Steve. He'll get back from his army shit and we'll go. And then he ended up going back, doing a second tour. And at that point, it was like, we got a chance. It was I haven't told it linearly in a while, and it's crazy to think about it. But I blink my eyes, and we're in Joey Z from Life of Agony. We're in his recording studio, recording our debut album with a motherfucker I grew up listening to.
Yeah.
And I'm singing, and it's like half the songs on our debut record I wrote with Steve. I'm singing Steve's melodies. I'm singing Steve's words, but I'm all of a sudden I'm the guy in this band. And it was this thing. It just sort of ended up that way, and it stayed that way. And over the years, we kept trying to fill out the lineup and figure it out and add guys. But by the time we got around to making that next record, it was always back down to the three of us. It was just me, Rob, and Sully. And then, so like, it just sort of happened naturally that way. And then that's the band. It's such
Awesome.
It's such a fucking wild story when I think about it linearly, that it literally started. I was probably about 20 years old, and now I'm 38. So that's a long run for an idea as a project, you know. But the live version of the band is already over 10 years old. So yeah, it's just kind of crazy how it all went down. But
that's
I love
awesome.
Clearly it all ended up where it should be, you know.
Right.
And Steve.
Well, I was gonna say I loved hearing that. Like that's the kind of shit I love hearing, because you know, like, because you know, the idea behind this podcast was to talk about people's musical journeys, because really, like, it's kind of like what you're talking about. Like, it's, you know, it's not just an overnight thing. Like, you know, there's time, you know, like, and like there's a story behind things, you know, that, you know, and that's amazing.
So many weird decisions that lead to that moment, right? Things that have nothing to do with music. If I didn't go see a friend of mine perform, she was doing a college production of the Vagina Monologues. I have no business going to that, but I told her I would for some reason. I didn't want to go, but I was like, all right, I'm going to go, you know. And that's the night that I meet, you know, the woman I would then spend a giant chunk of my life with,
right?
Change every aspect of my fucking DNA. And through her, I meet the guys that I'm going to, you know, like, we're on good terms. We're still friends, but like these guys became my family. You know what I mean? It's so it's so weird how that all worked out. It's like that decision had nothing to do with music, but literally changed my life musically forever. You can't write that. You can't predict that. You can't script that. You just have to live, and it happens. You know?
Yeah. That's amazing. And see, yeah, and so one thing I was also kind of keen to talk about, because for me, you know, I grew up in the suburbs of Connecticut, you know, like, so you know, apparently there was a metal scene in where I was, which was unbeknownst to me until after I had left and went to college, which I didn't know about, and I was always fascinated with the New York bands, because like, just because New York just seemed like such a crazy different environment than what I was used to. So it's just like, you know, and then, you know, going on a high school trip to, you know, Times Square or whatever, and, you know, granted, I know that's not the extent of the New York experience, but, you know, just being like, this is a bigger, larger than life place to be. And I'm always curious how, and you brought up Life of Agony, which is kind of a cool point too. It's just like, because I remember getting River Runs Red in high school and just being like, you know, like loving it, but also feeling very much like, wow, these guys have lived a hard life. and like, and so I was just wondering, like, what is it like, being a musician, and then like starting in the New York scene, because that's just like a crazy, to me at least, such a larger thing.
Well, your tone and the way you're walking around the question kind of shows that you have some inkling of what it is. It's incredibly difficult. These are shark infested waters. People are very much out for themselves. It is difficult to build camaraderie because you're shouting in a room full of echoes. You know what I mean? There's bands everywhere. There's people doing it everywhere. And quite honestly, the venues don't give a fuck. Nobody gives a fuck, because if you stand on some principle and go, I'm not doing this because of this, they're like, fine, we'll book this band instead. Like, it is very, you have to be self-reliant and you have to be self-motivated, because it will just swallow you and not care. And it's harsh, but it's real. Like, if you come to New York with starry eyes, you're gonna get beat up. Like, it's just what it is. you become battle tested in this town. You know what I mean? And again, like, it doesn't necessarily fit my temperament. And I've long wanted to leave, and I've made no bones about that. I love being from here. I'm so glad I was raised here. It gives me a skill set you can't get anywhere else, and I'm super happy to have that. But this isn't my speed, man. Like, I would love to be somewhere where it was slow. Like, you mentioned Connecticut. We just went. A buddy of mine lives in Bethlehem, fucking middle of nowhere. I just went out there for a few days to relax, clear my head. You know, a couple of us went up there. We had a great time. We randomly went to an open mic night, and it was the most cool, communal, talented, amazing open mic night I've ever been to in my entire life. And I was like, it is nothing like this in New York. You go to an open mic night and it's like a competition show. It's like you're on fucking, you know what I mean? It's like you're on like X Factor or whatever the fuck those things are called. So yeah, New York is rough that way. Finding places to play is rough. Finding, people to play with that aren't already in 6 bands is rough. Finding venues that will like let you actually do your thing or put you on a bill that might matter is so difficult. Every aspect of it is difficult. Like, you know what I mean? But what ends up happening is that when you do meet the right people, it's very passionate. There's no shortage of passion in this town. And that's the cool part. And there's also no shortage of style. So if you find passionate people, you can find any fucking genre, any blend. You get a lot of blended bands because of that. This guy's into this fucking music. This guy's into that fucking music. And they all get together and they fucking Cuisinart that shit and they make whatever the fuck comes out of it. And that's really cool because even Sunday, we have some things in common, but we don't have the same musical influences. Like, those guys are younger than me. They listen to a lot of pop punk and like, things that I'm like, that shit. I was already old when that music was getting popular. You know what I mean? I'm over here crusty. I'm talking about early Genesis and they're looking at me like I got 6 heads. Like, what the fuck? I'm like, yo, man, nursery crime. What? Get that shit. Like, trying to tell you, like, I'm talking about REM and The Cure, and they're like, okay. And I'm like, no, but for real though, like, so it's cool. We have a good blend of influences, and it comes, you can hear it in the music, man. There's these moments, and I envisioned the band as having 2 singers. I thought it would be me and Steve, right? He'd be the main guy. I'd sing lead on some songs, and we'd do our harmony thing. So I ended up getting that because Rob's a great singer and a great songwriter in his own right. Like, he'd be a fucking great guest for you. He's just as capable of being the guy in a band. Like, he could do it without me easy. And so we have that same kind of chemistry. But again, he comes from a totally different world. He writes totally different songs. It's almost like if you could probably listen to our records and pick out who wrote what, like, after a while. Because that's a Dan song, that's a Rob song. You know what I mean? There's that much variance in it, but yet it all ends up sounding like the band. And I think that's a very New York thing. It's like you get all these different influences, you throw them together, and what comes out is the band.
I just want to jump in to say thank you for listening, and here are the ways that you can support us. Subscribe to The Color of Air on your favorite podcast app like Apple, Stitcher, Radio Public, or Spotify, and be sure to rate and review. Also, follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/RetConGreg. Join our Patreon at patreon.com/Ret Con Industries, where we have 3 monthly subscription tiers of $1, $5, and $10. Depending on which tier you choose, you will have your name listed in the credits for every future podcast and music release, as well as access to bonus audio and video content, Bandcamp discounts, and exclusive merchandise through the Ret Con Swag Club. Finally, please check out all the music up for sale at retconindustries.bandcamp.com. And now, back to the podcast.
And I hear that in your music too, and like, I mean, I was very quick to buy the whole digital discography on Bandcamp because I love that feature.
I appreciate that so much, man. Thank you.
But I'd be lying if I said I've gone through every single record and know. But what I love is, I mean, I love your voice, first of all. I think I love the voice. It feels like I hate saying this but it feels real because you know how there's so much bullshit
Yeah,
in recording studios these
sure.
days. But I love that. I love that, and like the production on your stuff. It feels, again. It has like almost like a gritty feeling to it, but it doesn't sound underproduced or anything. It just has this vibe to it, and then and then I hear like some like psychedelic stuff, sort of, here and there with the guitar tones. Don't get me started on your guitar
Well,
tones.
that's the thing. Like, and speaking more to my solo stuff, right?
Yeah.
That was.
Oh yeah, sorry, that was your solo stuff. I'm sorry to say I'm confusing projects. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I could tell by the way you were speaking about it that's what you were talking about. Because August on Sunday, the guitar tones are there too, but it's definitely produced more like I don't produce the August on Sunday records, with the exception of the new EP that we did this year. I usually stay out of that because it's wearing a lot of hats, you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
want to be able to focus and like be with the guys, and like because we also, when we do August on Sunday recordings, everything is tracked live. We don't
Yeah.
multi-track it, so we just do it live and then we overdub on top. So I want to be there with the guys, so usually we get a producer and we do that, so until this new EP, which we made during quarantine, so we kind of had to multi-track it and go that way. I stayed out of that role, but I still like to bring some of what my aesthetic is as a producer and as a appreciator of recorded music. And you used great words. Like, people throw around things like lo-fi or whatever, and I'm like, I don't know if that fits what I'm doing with my solo music, because you're right, it isn't underproduced. It's actually very well considered, and I spend a lot of time working on these things. But I believe that variance is the key to listener interest. Spontaneity in sound gets people to go, ooh, what was that? And I'm a big believer that distance creates depth. So when I'm thinking about mixing a record in stereo, I'm not only thinking about it from left to right, but also from front to back. And I think a lot of people neglect that aspect of the stereo experience. Front to back is also a thing. So what frequencies jump to the front and what frequencies you tuck really make a difference in how it comes out of speakers versus headphones, and what somebody's going to get on a first listen or on the fifth listen, so I've sort of always have really been about that. And I in that way, I use that approach to every aspect of it. So my voice is an instrument like anything else. Some songs it's way up front being the lead singer. Other songs it's very deep inside the music. And these are conscious choices that I make because I'm trying to give off a certain experience when you listen to it once or 5 times,
Yeah.
So all that stuff to me. And the reason I started making solo records was just, I have an interesting brain. I have cerebral palsy. And so neurologically speaking, my brain throws out 400 neurons in the space of a normal brain's 1. So it moves fast. So
Okay.
I have a lot of ideas. And it's just became this thing of there's never enough projects. There's never enough people for me to do all the things I want to do and feel satisfied. And going all the way back to what we were talking about before, being in a band and feeling good, when you have this idea that you're really hype about and then you bring it to your band and it's like nothing like the music you're making, it's a difficult sell to be like, hey, let's put this into the lineup. They're looking at you like, what the fuck is that? And for a while, that would build resentment in me. But then I realized, yeah, it's true. When you're in a band, you got to move it gradually. You can't just, we like to think every record sounds different than the one before it, but it's gradual. It's not turn a light switch and make a disco record. You know what I mean? It's like, you gotta walk,
Yeah.
So yeah. I realized somewhere in that like, if I wanted to put out things that I was hot about, but it was only going to burn for a little while, stuff I wasn't trying to take to the stage, just something, I have an idea, make it, put it out, then the best way to go is to start making solo records. Did I think I was going to end up making fucking 13 of them or whatever it is at this point? No, that definitely wasn't the plan. But what happened was in the year 2014, I decided to do a project. I decided I was going to make 12 albums in 12 months. So an album a month from nothing. Album a month, start at the beginning, last day, pencil down, put it out. And I did it. I did it. But what ended up happening was, since nobody else could keep up that schedule, 6 out of the 12 albums that I released that year ended up being solo albums. So I made 6 solo albums in 1 year.
Yeah. Wow.
So by doing that, it then ended up making that an avenue for me. It was like, oh, okay, there's something I'm getting out of this that I didn't realize I needed. So once I did that, it was like, I guess I'm going to keep making solo records, you know? So when you look at it through that context, the fact that I have whatever 13 now, 6 of them were made in one fucking go. And then, the rest has been like 1 a year, sometimes 2 a year. If I had a good year that year. And then it's other than that, honestly, man, it's really just been the vibe of the time. Like sometimes I wake up one day and I'm like, I want to make a really raw garage rock sounding record. Cool. Let me start writing some songs. And I noticed following you that you're very much the same way.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I was checking out James Bond movies. I'm going to dissect this and make a bunch of shit. Like, I get that. That speaks to me. Like, I'm like, I understand that because I'm that way too. Like I woke up one day and I was like, you know what? I'm sick of the sound of these fucking electric guitars and I'm making an acoustic record, and it's just, and that's how it's gone. And I never really question it. And if the muse leaves me while I'm working on it, I put it to the side and work on something else. And, like I've had whole albums worth of material that never came out and then got cherry picked, a song here, a song there, and they made it onto other records,
Same here.
And that whatever initial idea didn't become anything, but bits and bobs of it, and I like that. I feel like that's the beauty of the digital age, is that you can be that way. You're not paying for tape. It's like you have the studio is set up. My bed is 3 feet over there. It's like you can just work and follow the muse around and not worry about it so much.
Yeah,
I think it's fucking rad.
I'm hearing you discuss that, and I both relate to it, but I also get a little envious because I'm like, you've got better follow through than I've got because I've got so many unfinished projects and like so many unfinished songs, and so like I'm like, you have a better track record of actually finishing things.
I mean, but you've been pretty hot the last year or so. I see you put out a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's just because I've been doing the synthesizer stuff, which has been kind of fun, and like I've been trying desperately to get out of that. Because I think I always had it in my head, like, oh, you have to produce things in the studio, and you have, like, I've got this entire record by my band Balaset, which I haven't done, like, we haven't played or done anything since 2015, but I've got, like, this entire record pretty much done except for bass, vocals, maybe keyboards, some solos maybe, but like I've got the songs and they're my favorite songs I've ever wrote for this band. But there's a disconnect when I was finishing it because I was, adamant about like writing lyrics and like doing something really cool. And, you brought up Genesis, and it's like, I wanted to make it like a concept record because I wanted something big out of it. And I think my musical brain wasn't capable of that at the time. Like the songs are there. The bass songs are great. The drums are recorded. The drummer did an amazing job. And, it's so like the framework is there, but like I did, and then I lost whatever, like, I don't know. I just was like, all right, so now I'm coming back to it, almost 10 years later. And I'm just like, all right, well, I think I know where I want to go with it, but it takes time. But again, it's also because I was producing that in the studio. I mean, and whereas like when I'm doing stuff at home, and I think I got into this because of the Capital Wrestling thing, it was just kind of like, I didn't have that luxury. I didn't have a studio. I didn't have a mixing engineer, and I didn't have a mastering engineer. So I had to do everything myself. And I have to come up with, 5 or 6 themes for a show, for new wrestlers debuting. Is the wrestler going to stick around after the show? I don't know. They might be a one and done. If they're a one and done, should I be actually writing a song for them or whatever? Can I recycle it? It's just, and like, just revisiting some of these wrestling themes, it's like, some of them were like half finished when I was using them for shows, because I was like, all right, I can get it show ready. And then there's show ready and there's release ready.
Well, I see, and that's the thing is you think because of the way that your brain perceives it that people are going to see the difference. So they're like, oh my God, that's clearly a demo. No, man, it's like most people listening, just all they really care about does the fucking thing have a groove? Can I vibe to it? That's it. Like it's somewhere along the way, I think I had that epiphany without realizing it. It wasn't a conscious thing of just like, you can't marry these fucking things. You know what I mean? Like the guy who produced our record told me a story about a guy, which by the way, shout outs to Josh. Salon Sound, go record there if you're in the Brooklyn area. He's fucking amazing. He told me a story about a guy who's been fucking recording the same like 5 tunes or whatever. Same one tune. No, it's one tune. And he's been recording at the studio for like 7 years or some shit, working on one fucking song. It's like, you know what? At that point, throw it in the fucking garbage. Go write 10 songs, forget that song, write 10 more, and record them in 2 days. Believe me, you'll be much happier with the results. You know what I mean? Somewhere along the way, it just hit me where it was like, there's nothing on the line. I'm not, Arista Records isn't beating down my door for the next million seller. You know, it's not happening. Like, I'm making these things because I want to. So it's like, at some point, you just got to realize, follow your instincts, chase those whims. Like you mentioned the guitar tones, and that really hits me in the chest because all of the guitar tones on those solo records are me loving recording guitar. It's like, hey, this is going to be, 3 layers on the left channel, 3 layers on the right channel, all playing different shit, but I'm going to make it sound like 2 guitars, or hey, this is going to be 1 guitar drenched in fucking 7 effects, or, like it's all, and there's no boss or anything to tell me not to do it. And there's no reason not to explore. And I've always lived by the simple motto of you can always take it out. Out is the easiest thing. Boop, mute, it's gone,
Yep.
So just throw it all in there, make a big fucking soup, make sense of it. As long as the only advice that I would give to somebody like starting out with recording is love what you put down. That you're not going to fix it in the mix. If you don't like it the day when you record it, you won't like it when you're trying to mix it. You won't like it when you're trying to commit to it. You love what you put down and then have fucking fun with it. Like there's there's no rules about this shit. And the more you, like I even would say it's so freeing that it can be paralyzing, right? Like I would set limitations for myself when making records. I'm like, oh, this record, I'm only going to use 8 tracks. So I got to make the whole record with 8 tracks. This record, I'm only using acoustic guitars. This record, I would put these like limitations on myself to be like, work within this framework and see what you can produce. Because I do think that, struggle is part of art. I don't know if everybody believes that, but I do think that, like, it is. Because for me, it's always been a bit of a bloodletting. It's like these things I can't say in words, these feelings I can't get out any other way. They come out in the music, right? So there's some inherent struggle. So if I'm trying to write and I'm in a great place, well, then I got to invent some struggle, put an obstacle in front of myself. And then, here we go. Let's get over that hurdle, give myself 30 days to make a record 12 times in a row. I would never do that again. Like that shit almost killed me, but you know what? I did it. It's like, I'm even at the point now where that's 2014. It's so long ago. Like when people bring it up, I'm like, yeah, that old hat,
Oh yeah, that year. Yep.
Yeah. Exactly. Like I'm at the point where I think about the chaotic mess of a human being I was at the time, more so than the records I made. It's like, but
well, yeah. Sorry.
No, you good. I could talk forever. You gotta.
No, but I was gonna. Just the way you're describing it just reminds me, like, your 2014 reminds me of my 2015. Not that I made that many records, but it was why I did this to myself. I will never know, but I did. I was still trying to get this battle set thing going and working and trying to get things going. That was when my doom metal band started, so we were trying to feel that out because it took us a while to get the right vibe of people, like about 4 years, but we were just getting started then. So I was like throwing myself into that project because I'm like, I want to do a doom metal project, and whatever. And then my friend was doing a retrospective from my friend Toby from my old bands was doing a retrospective. He's doing a week-long residency at the Stone in New York. I don't know if you ever went there. It was in Lower East Side. It was like this. It was owned by John Zorn, and it was like, they did like a lot of experimental music and things like that. So he was doing like a week's worth of shows there, which is 2 shows a night, and he was trying to do different things each time, representing different parts of his thing. So I was involved with the nights involved with the bands I was in with him. So I had one night where we were going to do 2 shows with our old band, then another show we were doing 1 album by the other band, and then I was doing another show where we were just doing it was like an open thing with us and a friend of ours, and just trying to put together songs at the last minute and see what happens. So I had that going on. So I'm trying to rehearse all this crap. And then that October, we were doing my friend used to book at a club here, and they used to do Halloween. They used to do tribute bands, which I always wanted to do growing up. So I finally got a chance to. And then it got to the point where I wanted to do it so much that I couldn't say no to people. So that this year, 2015, I was doing a Ronnie James Dio tribute band. I was doing Judas Priest Painkiller tribute band. And just for the fucking fun of it, I was playing bass in a Danzig tribute band. So, cramming all that in, and and like how I got through it, I have no idea.
Yeah. See, but it's funny. Everybody can push themselves in different ways. I couldn't take that many projects to the stage. I just don't.
Nope.
Physically, I don't have it. Like, I got one band I take to the stage, August on Sunday. Everything else is studio projects. My project with DA from Shinobi Ninja. That's who's also one of my oldest.
I just saw this. I just said you just put out something.
He's also one of my oldest friends. We go back to Beans and Rice. We have a project called the Jesus Orphans, and we've done I want to say 5 records, and today we just put out an new EP out of nowhere. We got together. He came by to sit in on some Twitch streams that I was doing, and we got into this flow where we would do the Twitch stream. After the stream, we'd make a song. So we did that for about 5 weeks, and then he came by another time when we recorded 2 more, and we're like, "Fuck it, let's just release this." So very quick, very out of nowhere. Like I didn't even know if we'd ever do another one. And then we just did it. And there it is. It's out. Put it out right before 12 o'clock today. I put it out,
Yeah, yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh crap, another project. I got to ask him about.
Yeah. But I mean, right now it's pretty much August on Sunday is the main focus, especially next year. You're kind of getting the early bird on that. We just finished mixing the record. I heard 2 little things to tweak, and then that's it. It's going to go to the mastering engineer. So it's really at that point. It's done finally, because
that's awesome.
We recorded it in 2019. The plan was 2020 was the release it tour like motherfuckers year. Obviously that didn't happen. So now that's moving to 2022. So this year we're getting it done, get it out. Probably won't release it until next year. You know what I mean? But in the meantime, we'll figure out everything we're going to do, get the artwork ready, get the vinyl pressed, the whole deal. And then next year, put it out, push it hard. So next year is going to be a real busy year for that band. But other than that, I'm doing the solo records as they come. I'm working on a covers album right now, which I'm really excited and terrified for, because I don't know, there's something really naked about putting your influences on display like that,
Yeah.
And I'm not really a play it straight guy, so they're all interpretations of songs, So it's interesting, and a lot of them, it's actually cool. I think it's a tentative title. I don't know. I think I'm gonna call it Half in the Bag, because a lot of these covers started on nights with friends from other bands hanging out, putting too many drinks back and being like, yo, let's record fucking Smithereens, bro. Let's go, yo, Blood and Roll. Let's do it. You know what I mean? So a lot of them started like that. So some of them are pretty loose and kind of, you can feel the fun in the room, kind of covers. And then others are very like tight, me alone in a room, mad scientist style, reinventing songs. So I'm working on that, and I'm thinking that's going to be the next release under my name. Is that a cool little? Probably put it out for free. I won't even charge money for it. Like, covers record. Everybody can just go get it, check it out. But that's really it. I was in a project called Side Piece, but that's winding down. So we're probably not going to continue with that. I have some ideas for things I want to do. I really would like to get Steve back in the fold and see if we can't come full.
I want to hear that.
And make.
I want to hear him
together, yeah. On the sneaky, man, I could always show you some of the old August on Sunday demos. They're not. I'll say it here, but it might never come to pass. This might be a broken promise, but I've been messing around with remastering the original August on Sunday demos that have Steve on vocals. So
okay.
I've been, because again, it's not something I would mass release, but I'd put it up on our Bandcamp for like $5, you know?
Yeah.
For people who are interested in that, going that far back with the band, I think it's an interesting snapshot of the birth of it, you know? So we'll see. I'm messing around with that idea. If it comes to pass, it does. If not, I never said it was a guarantee, but you know, that, like I said, man, that's how I like to do it. I like to just constantly go where the energy is, and sort of, that's how I ended up doing the Twitch thing, and that's how Hive Mind came back. And you know, it's just like, hey man, wherever there's a positive vibration, wherever it doesn't feel like I'm chasing something ego driven or, you know, or desperately, that's kind of where I want to put my energy is. You know, I want to be where it feels nice.
That's awesome, man. Fuck, man, this hour flew by. Like, I knew it would. Like, I knew like this. I was like sincerely looking forward to this interview because I was like, oh, hey, you know, I wish I had someone like Danny to grow up with. That would have been like, music shit would have been so much fun.
Well,
like,
I mean,
just, like,
clearly, inevitably, we have to collab on something.
Yeah, exactly.
It'll happen. I have no doubt.
Yeah, and we will. We'll. It could be a broken promise. We don't know. I know. I was just talking. I heard you mention the broken promise thing on the show the other night.
So good, isn't it? It's like, as long as you label it a potential broken promise, you're in the clear. You know what I mean? It's like, Lord
Set
knows,
the expectations low.
Always just a little bar that old shit. Like, it's the best way to do it.
Oh man. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Never did I count the pavement squares or notice different shades of gray. Joyful heart, I've got a joyful